If you've ever felt that, that absolute gut punch of rejection, if you've been crushed by criticism after pouring your soul into something,
Oh, yeah.
or if you've watched a business plan just completely fail,
Mm.
the power of a setback.
Mm.
It's a universal human experience. But here's the core question we are really trying to unpack today. What separates the people who let those moments define them from, the high achievers who use them as an immediate launchpad?
That is the perfect starting point because our source material today, it argues that success isn't defined by avoiding failure. Not at all. It's defined entirely by how fast and how intelligently you recover from it. It's all about mastering the bounce back.
Exactly. Our deep dive is focused on the practical, sort of no excuses wisdom from bounce back,
Yeah.
overcoming setbacks to succeed in business and in life, which was written by the legendary and, sometimes controversial college basketball coach John Calipari.
And what makes this book so interesting, I think, is its source. This isn't abstract self-help or some academic theory. It feels more like a raw, high-stakes talk, delivered right in the locker room.
Right.
Calipari has operated under a national spotlight for decades, so his lessons on resilience, they come from surviving massive public pressure, relentless media criticism, and just constant professional reinvention.
And his core message is so immediate and powerful. Setbacks are not roadblocks. He says they are designed to be setups for growth. We're not talking about simply surviving failure here. We're talking about using failure as the most valuable information you can possibly get.
And that's precisely why this deep dive is so valuable. The entire focus is on transforming that adversity into fuel. Our mission is to pull out the 6 foundational lessons, the bounce back playbook, if you will, to show that resilience is a teachable skill, not just a trait you're born with.
Okay, let's get into it. We're jumping straight into the foundational mindset shift, starting with that immediate emotional fallout of failure.
The first lesson, it really addresses the single most crippling thing about a loss, which is how we personalize it.
Lesson 1, straight from the coach. Failure is information, not identity.
And this distinction is it's everything. When something goes wrong, you lost the account, the company folded, the interview went sideways. Most people, they internalize that loss and conclude, I am a failure.
Right.
Calipari just hammers home that the failure belongs to the methodology, not to the individual.
I find that incredibly freeing. I mean, it turns the entire painful experience from a permanent verdict on your self-worth into simple data points you just need to process.
Exactly.
If you can shift your internal dialogue to see failure as feedback, it loses all its emotional weight.
And this has massive practical application for anyone right now who's grappling with a loss. It shifts you immediately out of the victim mentality. You stop asking that existential question, why did this happen to me? And you start asking the actionable one, what is this teaching me? That redirection, it empowers you to rebuild right away.
And that framework is so necessary because it leads directly into lesson 2, which is often the most painful step, I think, especially for high performers. You must take responsibility, even when it's unfair.
This is Calipari's take on extreme ownership, and it's a challenging concept. In almost every major professional setback, there are always elements outside your control.
Of course.
The market shifted, a key partner quit, a regulator changed the rules. It's easy and, frankly, often justified to blame external factors.
But blaming just keeps you stuck, doesn't it? It assigns the power for recovery to the thing that harmed you in the first place.
Precisely. The core insight here is that while you can't control what happens to you, you always control your response and your preparation for the next attempt. When you choose to accept ownership of the outcome, even when it feels unjust, you immediately reclaim power over the next step.
So responsibility accelerates recovery. Excuses delay it. It's really just a mechanism for speed. Let's say an entrepreneur loses a major funding round because the economy cratered. They could blame the Fed, or they could take ownership of their own contingency plan, saying, I own the fact that my burn rate was too high for a prolonged downturn. Which mindset gets them back in the game faster?
The latter, every single time. Responsibility forces you to analyze your systems, your procedures, and that leads to immediate course correction. The former, well, it just leaves you waiting for the Fed to change policy. That willingness to embrace extreme ownership is the signature trait of highly resilient people.
That makes perfect sense. So once you master the mental game, that failure is just information and ownership is empowering. The next logical step is to build the actual engine to move forward. How do we manufacture the confidence we need to step back into that high-pressure arena?
And this is where we transition from philosophy to practical, measurable skill building. The third lesson is maybe the biggest pushback against that sort of abstract, inspirational thinking.
Lesson 3. It challenges the reliance on quick fixes and motivational speeches. Confidence comes from preparation, not motivation.
This is where the coach's DNA is just so clear. We're often told to be confident or feel inspired before a big challenge. Calipari argues that inspiration is fleeting, it's unreliable. True, unshakable confidence isn't a feeling, it's a certainty that comes from knowing deep down that you have actually done the work.
It's the compound effect at play, isn't it? Motivation is like a sugar rush that fades in an hour. But preparation, well, that compounds daily. You stack the hours, you rehearse the difficult conversation, you stress test the model, and that creates a foundation that no amount of criticism can really shake.
Think about the application here. Whether you're preparing for a massive presentation, a negotiation, or even a difficult conversation with a family member, the comfort you feel walking into that room, it isn't magic. It's the reflection of the consistent effort you put in when nobody was watching.
But let's dig into that idea of preparation. It can't just be busy work. What kind of preparation is Calipari talking about that really builds resilience?
It's highly realistic preparation. For him, that means running drills until they're automatic. So muscle memory takes over under pressure. For us, that means anticipating failure points. If you're launching a product, preparation isn't just planning the launch, it's having the crisis communications drafted, having the technical rollback plan ready,
Okay.
and having rehearsed the likely skeptical questions from critics. The confidence comes from knowing you have a plan B, C, and D, and you've practiced them.
That reframes confidence completely. It's not positivity. It's competence built through deliberate, often monotonous work. And this is where it gets really interesting, because the next lessons pivot from internal discipline to external survival, especially when the world is watching you stumble.
Indeed. We move to lesson 4. You must reinvent to stay relevant.
This insight comes directly from Calipari having to adapt his entire professional life. I mean, he couldn't rely on the same coaching style he used 20 years ago. The college basketball landscape changed drastically, forcing him to evolve from managing seasoned players to developing pros in, 9 months?
And that adaptation is the key mechanism of recovery. If you encounter a setback, it's a signal that your approach, your methodology, or even the underlying assumption that got you there is now outdated. What got you here absolutely will not get you there.
And the cost of refusing to change is just enormous. If you cling to the comfortable, familiar path that just failed, those setbacks become permanent fixtures. But adaptation, the willingness to shed an old identity or an old model, turns those losses into leverage for the future.
This is so crucial for professionals right now. I mean, if your industry is undergoing rapid digital transformation, or if market conditions have fundamentally shifted, clinging to the old way of doing business just guarantees irrelevance. Reinvention doesn't just mean changing your clothes, it means updating your core skill set and your mental model of success.
And tied directly to that is lesson 5, which is maybe the hardest one to swallow when you're under pressure, especially given Calipari's controversial standing. Criticism is the price of growth.
The author is uniquely qualified to speak on this, having faced constant scrutiny over his systems and his massive contracts. Once you start aiming high, once you start pushing limits, criticism is not just likely, it is guaranteed. He frames it as a measure of significance.
I love the mental flip he encourages here. The old thought is, I must be doing something wrong if I'm getting criticized. The new thought is, if nobody's criticizing me, I'm probably not pushing limits that matter.
Exactly.
Criticism is just validation that you're doing something noteworthy enough for people to feel strongly about.
And the actionable advice is beautifully blunt.
Ruh.
Stop trying to be liked. Start trying to improve. The drive to be universally liked, it forces compromise and prevents you from making the necessary, difficult, or sometimes unpopular decisions that you need for exponential growth.
But let's play devil's advocate for a second. Sometimes criticism is useful feedback. How do you distinguish between the necessary noise you should ignore and the constructive information you should, actually listen to?
Well, that's where the discipline of lesson 1 comes back in. You treat criticism like information, not identity. If the information is consistent, actionable, and points to a flaw in your methodology, not your character, then it's valuable feedback. If it's just generalized negativity or personal attacks, it's the price of entry, the tax you pay for being successful and visible.
Right.
You process the information and you discard the noise.
That makes the external pressure manageable. So we've covered the mindset shifts, the importance of preparation, and how to adapt under public pressure. But how do you handle the actual pain that comes with these high-stakes moments? That brings us to our final lesson on where mental toughness comes from.
Lesson 6 asserts that mental toughness is built in hard moments.
We often imagine resilience as some innate quality, but the source material clarifies that true mental toughness originates in specific crucible experiences: pain, pressure, and uncertainty. You don't build inner strength when you're comfortable and winning.
That's the most valuable insight of the entire playbook, I think. Comfort never creates strength. Adversity is the training ground. So if you're currently in a difficult period facing financial uncertainty, dealing with a competitive loss, you have to view that period not as a waste of time, but as active strength training.
So we shouldn't waste the difficult times.
Yeah.
How do we intentionally use them to build toughness? What's the application here?
It's about practicing emotional regulation under fire. When the pressure is highest, when the anxiety is spiking, you train yourself to maintain clarity and control your emotional state. Instead of reacting impulsively, you pause, you analyze, and you execute the prepared plan, the one you developed back in lesson 3. That practice, repeated under stress, that's what truly builds toughness.
Okay, now that we have all 6 lessons, from accepting failure as information to building toughness through adversity, let's talk about the source material itself and why this format delivers so well.
The format is powerful because it carries the weight of authority. If you prefer battle-tested, real-world lessons and coaching advice over, generalized corporate frameworks, this guide works exceptionally well. It's highly personal and immediately motivating.
But we always have to maintain balance. What are the limitations of absorbing resilience advice delivered with this intense athletic focus?
Well, the major potential drawback is the frequent use of sports analogies, which might require a slight translation for people whose professional life is, say, far removed from the court, an academic or a software developer.
Sure.
Also, as we noted, it is a mindset manual, not a checklist. It focuses heavily on the why and the how to think about failure, and less on a rigid step-by-step methodology for fixing a faulty system.
That's a great distinction. It prepares your mind for the fight, but it doesn't hand you the detailed technical manual. So who is this deep dive ultimately for? Who will get the most immediate value out of these 6 lessons right now?
It's tailored for anyone currently needing to rebuild confidence. The entrepreneur facing the next failure curve, the student dealing with rejection, or the leader who feels overwhelmed by pressure. It's for people who need a powerful mental framework to not just stand back up, but to stand up faster than their competitors.
Excellent. The final verdict on Bounce Back is that it's a necessary, no excuses guide to resilience. It strips away the comforting platitudes, and it forces you to embrace the necessary truth. The speed and intelligence of your recovery matters far more than the initial failure itself.
That core takeaway remains ironclad. Your deliberate response to failure matters more than the failure itself.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener, right now? We've learned that failure provides essential information, and that consistent preparation provides the confidence required to act on that information.
So think about the biggest uncertainty or setback you are currently navigating. Calipari teaches that resilience is built during adversity and that preparation compounds confidence. If you truly see your current challenge as your greatest training ground, what specific consistent preparations, whether that's practicing a difficult skill, rehearsing a tough conversation, or stress testing your systems, could you be making right now that will transform that uncertainty into your next unshakable source of confidence? That is the immediate link between knowledge and action.
Something for you to mull over until our next deep dive. Thanks for joining us.